Hey, what's up? It's GC Kinsey, here to talk about the fact that you can't take a vacation from your gender dysphoria, and give some tips about how you can still enjoy your vacations anyway. With summer approaching, a lot of y'all might be taking vacation soon, so I thought now would be a great time to talk about vacationing when you have gender dysphoria. And before I dive in, I do want to acknowledge that having the time and money to take a vacation is a huge privilege, and it shouldn't have to be. In an ideal world, all of us should be able to travel and explore and rest and relax to our heart's content. But we don't live in an ideal world, we live in a late-stage capitalistic hellscape, so unfortunately vacations aren't something everyone can access. Hopefully someday we'll achieve a future where that changes. With that disclaimer out of the way, I want to focus this video on an aspect of vacationing that can disproportionately impact trans and non-binary people, which is gender dysphoria, and how you can't take a vacation from your dysphoria no matter how much you may want or need to. That can be a tough thing to process and accept, especially on top of all the other things trans and non-binary people tend to worry about when it comes to vacations. If we're traveling, will we be safe and treated well at our final destinations? Will we encounter any difficulties getting there, like with airport security or border control? Will our passports or IDs cause us any problems? Are our travel options limited by local laws about gender expression, etc.? If we're not traveling, just taking some time off, will we be spending that time with people who support us, like friends or chosen family? Or will we be spending it with people who don't accept or even acknowledge our true selves, like unsupportive relatives or roommates we might be stuck living with? Or will we be spending it alone? And does that make things better or worse? So when we already have to worry about all those other things, it can really take its toll when we also have to worry about gender dysphoria that never goes away, not even on vacation. It can make our time off not feel like a real break at all, and that sucks. But I want to share some things I've learned about how to make it suck less, because even if we can't take a vacation from our dysphoria, we all still deserve to have vacations that we can enjoy. So here are 5 tips for making the most of your vacation anyway. Number 1. Have a plan for addressing sources of dysphoria during your vacation. Even though dysphoria on vacation is never fun, it can be easier to deal with if you know it's coming and have a plan for how to get through it. I approach this by planning for body dysphoria and social dysphoria separately. For body dysphoria, I think about the tools I use to mitigate it day to day, like wearing a binder, wearing clothes that masculinize my body shape, filling in my eyebrow arches, and consider how the use of those tools might have to change on vacation for safety and practicality. If my total travel time is longer than 8 to 10 hours, I make binding safer by wearing one of my exercise binders that's a size bigger. If my vacation involves swimming, like a body surfing trip to the beach, then I'll also need to wear an exercise binder under my swimsuit. If I'm going on a solo-cation, I can take as many binder breaks as I need to. If I'm going on vacation with friends I know and trust well enough to let them see me without a binder, I also have more freedom in when I can take breaks. But if I'm going on vacation with less close friends, or especially with relatives, then I'm a lot more limited in my binder breaks and have to plan more carefully around that. If I'm traveling somewhere very hot, I may not be able to layer my clothing in a way I usually do to achieve a masculine body shape. If I need to show my ID while traveling, like to airport security, I have to be aware that my eyebrows aren't going to match the pre-transition photo on that ID if I fill them in. And my face already looks different enough otherwise from testosterone that I don't want to get questioned. So I plan to arrive early, get through security as quickly as possible, and then find a bathroom and fill in my brows so they're only in their sad, sparse state for as little time as possible before I board the plane. Having to do things differently with binding, or my clothing choices, or my eyebrows is a source of body dysphoria for me. There's no getting around that. So I try to make as few compromises on those things as I have to. And I build in time to decompress from the dysphoria that results from the compromises I do need to make. For social dysphoria, I think about all the times during my vacation when I'll have to interact with other people, anticipate how that might go, and plan for what I'm going to do if it goes as badly as possible. That way, if it goes well, I'll be pleasantly surprised. And I learned the hard way that I have to do this after I got unpleasantly surprised on some vacations earlier on in my transition. When I flew to Las Vegas for Skate America in 2021, at that point I had not been misgendered out in public for 6 months prior prior to that trip, which I attributed to the pronoun masks that I had started wearing during the pandemic. But during that trip, I realized that it wasn't the pronoun masks at all, it was just sheer dumb luck, I guess, because I got misgendered by 8 different people on my way to Vegas, including airport security, flight attendants, my Lyft driver, and hotel staff, in spite of the pronouns that were on my face. And I was so caught off guard by this that it magnified my social dysphoria to a massive degree. By which I mean I ended up crying in the shower as soon as I got into my hotel room and wondering how the hell I was supposed to enjoy the rest of my vacation. A year later, I got slapped in the face with a similar experience while traveling to and from an anime convention. I was 3 months on T at that point, and I thought that'll help cut down on the misgendering, right? And I was extremely wrong. So now when I go on vacation, I plan for when, not if, I get misgendered. That way I can be prepared for the dysphoria that results. I assume that every person I talk to will misgender me no matter how masculine I'm presenting, and I have a few short responses ready so that I don't get too rattled by it. I also try to interact with the bare minimum number of people I have to, and I try to cram those interactions onto my travel days so they don't mess up my actual vacation days. Just like with body dysphoria, I build in time to deal with any social dysphoria I feel. And if I happen to travel to a place where people don't gender their customers unnecessarily, shout out to Vancouver there, then I can enjoy my vacation that much more. The way you plan to deal with dysphoria on your vacation will depend on how your dysphoria typically manifests and affects you, what kinds of dysphoria triggers you might encounter, and what kinds of things tend to help you feel better. So what works best for me might not work best for you, but regardless, having a plan does help. Number 2. Structure your vacation in whatever way is least stressful for you. Dysphoria is a form of stress, so on vacation, I like to eliminate as many other sources of stress as possible. That helps keep the combined total of dysphoria stress and other stress down to a manageable level. I actually started doing this before I knew I was trans or that dysphoria was a factor. I used to feel so stressed on a lot of family vacations and didn't realize why until I took a trip with friends for the first time. Then it became clear that those family vacations were often overfilled with too many things to do and not enough downtime to just chill. So now when I plan a vacation, I build in a balance of stuff I want to do and free time for rest and relaxation. If I'm going to a comic or anime convention, I don't cram in more costume changes or photo shoots or panels than I can handle, and I've gotten better about that with time and experience. If I'm going to a figure skating competition, I make that the focus of my trip and don't plan any other activities. That way I can use the limited times we get between events just to relax. If I'm going to the beach, I use tide charts to plan peak times for swimming and body surfing, the sun to plan peak times for walks and photography, and then I spend the rest of my time reading or writing fanfiction or taking naps. If I'm doing a staycation at home, I schedule some time for my creative pursuits and other time for pure fun when I'm not worried about being productive. If I'm vacationing with other people as opposed to a solocation, I set boundaries around my time to keep the stress down. That means planning ahead for which activities are most important to do with the rest of the group instead of trying to do every single thing. For example, maybe we all go out sightseeing together, but then I stay in and order takeout and have a nap while they all go out to dinner afterward. If I'm traveling a long distance, I build in extra rest time on both ends of the trip so that I don't get overwhelmed by jet lag. And if that means forking over the cash for an extra night at the hotel, so be it. I would rather budget for that and be well rested than save money and be stressed because I'm tired. In my first tip, I talked about how I like to build in time to decompress from my dysphoria on vacation, and structuring my vacations in a way that minimizes stress is where that time comes from. So if you're planning a vacation, think about what things make vacations more stressful for you and try to eliminate as many sources of stress from your schedule as possible. Number 3. Compartmentalize your experiences. It can be all too easy to fall into a mindset of, if something goes wrong, that ruins the whole vacation. Whether it's a delayed flight, a maintenance issue at your hotel, an encounter with a rude stranger, an injury or illness, whatever. If something bad happens on your vacation, you may not enjoy it or have good memories of it. But as a trans person, if I approached vacations with that mindset, I would never enjoy a single vacation ever, because dysphoria always happens and it's always bad. So instead of letting that overshadow the tone of your whole vacation, my advice is to compartmentalize your experiences instead. I even do this on a smaller scale than vacations. Like one year I went out for a birthday dinner with a female relative and the server kept calling us ladies at the end of every single sentence, like overly aggressive gendering and misgendering in my case. So of course that made me extremely dysphoric, but the food I ate that night was delicious. So I didn't consider my birthday dinner ruined because I compartmentalized my experiences. The misgendering was bad, the food was great, overall dinner was fine. And I think about vacations in the same way. That trip to Skate America that I mentioned earlier lives in my memory as one of the best vacations I've ever taken, despite the fact that it started with getting misgendered so many times that I literally cried. And that didn't stop after the first day. I got misgendered every single day of that trip by someone, either at the hotel or the arena. But I had so many other incredible experiences on that trip that more than made up for it. I got to see Shoma Uno skate in person. That alone made it an amazing vacation regardless of anything else that happened. But I also got to see lots of other figure skaters that I love too. I got to chat with Misato Komatsubara and Tim Coletto in line at the hotel coffee shop. I got to stay on the same floor of the hotel as Adam Xiao Fa, and we did the bro nod at each other when we crossed paths in the hallway. And completely aside from figure skating, I got to see Lady Gaga's jazz and piano show while I was out in Vegas, which is one of the most incredible concerts I've ever been to. I even got called sir by the cashier when I bought pizza for dinner one night, which gave me a major burst of gender euphoria to balance out all the dysphoria, and even spawned my series of short-form videos called This Is What Gender Euphoria Looks Like. Your dysphoria may always be there with you on vacation, but if you compartmentalize your experiences, if you focus on the good parts, then your dysphoria doesn't have to ruin everything. You can say, I enjoyed these aspects of my vacation and not these other ones, without making a blanket statement that the entire vacation was bad. And that's not only a useful tip for dealing with dysphoria, it can also help you enjoy your vacation in spite of what else might go wrong. Because really, is any vacation ever perfect? No, but that doesn't mean it can't still be good. Number 4. Find ways to offset your dysphoria with things that bring you euphoria. In the previous tip, I mentioned how on my trip to Skate America, getting gendered correctly by just one person gave me enough euphoria to counteract the dysphoria from getting misgendered by countless others. But you can't always bank on gender euphoria from the people around you, so it's important to build in sources of gender euphoria that you can bring to yourself on vacation. One way I did this at another figure skating competition was through my clothing. I brought my gayest outfits to the Four Continents Championships in 2023, because I thought if I'm gonna get misgendered no matter what I wear, then I may as well dress extra fabulous. And doing that increased my gender euphoria and my confidence. Another thing I like to do is get a fresh haircut right before every trip. That way my hair is going to look its most masculine during my vacation, which brings me gender euphoria. And of course, if I'm going to a convention, cosplay is an automatic source of gender euphoria. Sometimes boosting gender euphoria on vacation can be challenging, like if you're traveling with unsupportive relatives or with people you're not out to. So you may have to keep your sources of gender euphoria more private or more limited, but it's still possible. Maybe you do it by wearing gender-affirming underwear. No one else can see it, but you know it's there. Maybe you quietly consume some trans-related media on your phone. When I'm on a vacation like that, I might put in headphones and use my downtime to edit voice recordings or other trans-related content for this channel. What works best for you will depend on how you personally experience gender dysphoria and euphoria. But the important thing is not to let your dysphoria overwhelm you to the point that it makes you miserable. So finding ways to offset it with gender euphoria, no matter how small, can really help. Number 5. Share your feelings about your dysphoria with your support system. I previously mentioned how there's a tendency to overgeneralize our vacations as bad if something goes wrong, even if other parts of them were good. But there's a similar and inverse tendency to present our vacations to others as perfect, which I think is only exacerbated by the expectations of social media. There's a lot of pressure to post pictures and updates that make it seem like you're having the best time, even if you're not. And that's why my final tip is to share your feelings about your dysphoria with the supportive people in your life rather than keeping those feelings bottled up. If you're struggling with dysphoria on vacation, you don't have to pretend that everything is fine. There are a lot of different ways you can lean on your support system for this. Maybe you and some fellow trans friends have all agreed that you can vent to each other about any dysphoria you experience. That way you know that you can all relate. If you have a therapist, maybe right before your vacation you talk with them about some strategies for mitigating your dysphoria during it. And maybe you schedule an appointment with them for right afterwards so that you can process any dysphoria you felt. If you've established your social media as a place where you can safely and reliably get support, like if you have a private account, maybe you post about your dysphoria there alongside all your other vacation updates. Because within that select network of people, you know there's no pressure to make your vacation look perfect. If you're vacationing with people in your support system, that can be a bit of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, it can really help to have supportive people right there with you when something makes you dysphoric. But on the other hand, you might worry about your dysphoria bringing down the vibe for everyone else. So talk about that beforehand, warn your people that dysphoria happens for you on vacation sometimes, and establish some ground rules and boundaries about what kind of support you might need in those moments and what they're able and willing to provide. And of course, offer to reciprocate their support in other ways that they might need it. That conversation will probably look different depending on whether you're vacationing with just other trans people or with a mix of trans and cis people, and especially if you're the only trans person in the group. With all trans people, looking out for each other in dysphoric moments might come more naturally, whereas most cis people probably haven't thought about dysphoria on that level, so they may need more discussion about it beforehand and guidance on how to be an effective ally. If you don't yet have a fully established support network, you can still get support anonymously. There are trans advocacy groups with hotlines you can call. There are places online like subreddits or Discord servers where you can reach out to other trans people. And even though that may not be as ideal as getting support from people you know, it's still better than bottling up your feelings entirely. Internalizing your dysphoria with no outlet is a recipe for feeling like crap on vacation. Sharing those feelings with someone supportive, anonymously or not, will make it easier to have a good time. One last thing to note here is that you can wait until your vacation is over to share your feelings if that's easier for you. That's where my previous tip about compartmentalizing your experiences might come into play. On some vacations, I've told myself I'm gonna take all these terrible dysphoric feelings and put them in a tiny box in a corner of my brain so that I can have fun while I'm here. Then I'll open that box up and deal with it when I get home. That's a totally valid approach, as long as you do deal with it and get the support you need. So there you have it. 5 things you can do to enjoy your vacations in spite of your dysphoria. And now is where I want to turn the conversation over to you. If you experience gender dysphoria, what advice do you have for managing it on vacation? What are some of your favorite vacation memories that might encourage or inspire other trans and non-binary people? If you've succeeded in taking a vacation from your dysphoria, how did you do it? Because I would love for the entire premise of this video to be proven wrong. And as always, what questions do you have about all this? Drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also reach out to me on other social media. I'm GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I've got more vlogs like this one about my experiences as a queer person, along with cosplay music videos, makeup tutorials, a bunch of cool resources for singers about voice changes on testosterone, and more right here on this channel. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all of your support. If you're vacationing this summer, I hope you have an amazing time, and I will see you on the next one.